The leaders are worried about how strong you are and how it will change things here. They know you have a lot of power, maybe too much for this world to handle. So what do you suggest? A world without magical energy is weak. They would like you to go to a different place, one that can manage your power. Why not just trap me somewhere? That is one idea. Suddenly, Jinwoo slammed his hand on the table, making the young man jump. He spoke quietly. They want to be rid of me because they don't need me anymore. Is that right? Were they scared of how strong I am? Jinwoo kept smiling, but his eyes were serious. The young man was surprised, and quickly waved his hand. No, not at all. He gave Jinwoo a newspaper he had brought. Jinwoo looked at the article on the front page. There was a picture of someone Jinwoo knew. It was about a prediction from Norma Selner, a woman people had called the upgrader in his past life. The prediction said, "The god of death will soon come to this land." Jinwoo frowned when he read the words god of death. She hadn't been this correct before, but something about connecting with their world had made her predictions better. Jinwoo looked closely at a part of the article about Mrs. Selner. Selner began to understand things deeply 2 years ago. It seemed important that this happened around the same time the cup of reincarnation sent them back. Are you saying I can cause this to happen? Yes, that is right. Jinwoo felt calmer, and the young man breathed out a small sigh of relief. The leaders are happy to offer you a safe place to help stop these changes, if you want. Jinwoo sat back in his chair. He still didn't sense any anger from this man. He and the leaders were trying to be helpful. But Jinwoo couldn't believe he was hearing this on his first day back home. He was really looking forward to coming back, so he was upset. He didn't want to talk about it right now, and he showed it clearly. Could you come back later? Of course, the envoy said to the famous hero, who had stopped the war between the monarchs and the rulers. He politely said goodbye. He stood up and left a simple black business card so Jinwoo could reach him later, if he decided to accept his offer. Jinwoo looked at both sides of the card and put it in his pocket with a small smile. He thought quickly, but the excitement he felt earlier began to fade. If every living thing has a reason to exist, Jinwoo knew one thing for sure. He had done what he set out to do, saving the world from unusual events and the attacks of powerful beings. But his special abilities weren't needed anymore, and it was difficult to get rid of them, similar to how complicated it is to deal with a powerful energy source. He wondered if he was now unnecessary. While he was thinking about this, he noticed someone he knew walking by an ice cream shop. Jinwoo found himself walking outside before he even thought about it, as if something was pulling him forward. He often wondered if he, the Shadow Monarch, should even be here. But as long as he had a reason to stay, a girl wearing a running suit stopped while she was jogging. She turned around and sniffed the air, noticing a pleasant smell. It seemed the smell was coming from an ice cream shop, where a boy was standing in the doorway looking at her. Did ice cream always smell so good? The girl shook her shoulders and kept running. Jinwoo couldn't stop smiling as he watched the girl run away. There were still people he cared about in the world. Some people cared about him, both now and in the past. That was reason enough for him to remain. I first met him inside a peculiar area my king had made. My job was to evaluate anyone who went inside. My leader told me he wanted to test if the human was worthy to be his chosen one. I somehow knew this would be the last thing he ever asked me to do. My leader hadn't cared about the war since he forgave the powerful leaders, so I wondered why he was so interested in this ordinary human. I thought my leader was getting ready to say goodbye, but I had to follow his orders. I couldn't ask why or tell him what to do. I had to obey him, because that was all I was able to do. After losing most of my strength, I was left by myself in this unusual place to test the human. The people who live here call this place a dungeon, don't they? The dungeon looked like the throne room of a castle, and a tall throne stood deep inside this fake castle room. I looked around, trying to remember what life was like when I was a person. It was hard to recall details. The architect had built this amazing place using the power of my former king. I touched the large columns that stood along the pathway from the entrance to the throne at the far end. I was really impressed by how well the architect built everything. The careful details probably helped the human believe in my king's power. Suddenly I felt someone coming, so soon. I got scared and accidentally sat on the throne as I sensed something getting closer, much faster than I expected. I was quiet for a moment. Then I wondered if I was being too proud by sitting on the throne. I knew my king's thoughts were inside the person I was about to watch, so I felt a little awkward about not being polite. I decided it was best not to be rude at all, and quickly ducked behind a nearby pillar. The door slowly opened, and the person didn't notice me, because it was dark all around. Luckily I hadn't ruined my owner's plans. I let out a breath of relief. Then when the person was about 10 steps away, I carefully walked out from behind the stone column and stood in front of him. It was a young man. He was very nervous, and everyone in the quiet room could feel it. I didn't think he was a good choice, so this is the person my leader has picked. Even if this wasn't my final job, I wouldn't have planned to be gentle. If the person wasn't strong enough, I would defeat them. But as I got ready to fight, the man suddenly raised his fists. Was he trying to fight me with his bare hands? For a moment, I thought he was very brave for a human. I put down my cape and my weapons so we would both have an equal chance. Wow, why did he look so surprised by everything I did? I could see he was really trying, but did he actually know how to fight well? We would soon find out. The effect was instant. Ouch. He fell to the ground. Even though I hadn't used all my power, I knocked him to his knees. I was a little surprised, but also glad. This man losing the competition meant my king would be able to stay in charge for a while longer. I was actually glad my king had not succeeded. I decided the human deserved a noble end, one that matched his courage. I used the power my king had given me for a short time to bring the sword I had set aside across the room to my hand. I tried to end the man's life quickly, believing it would be the kindest way. It was as if he knew what I was thinking, and he lowered his head willingly. That was a good decision. He was both very wise and very courageous. It's sad that the only way to stop my leader was to kill him. I stepped forward to cut off the head of the man who had accepted his fate with honor. But right then his eyes changed from looking gentle. Clang, he stopped my sword with his hand, and quickly stabbed a small knife towards my face. A blog. I was surprised, not that he had blocked my sword, but that he hadn't given up, even when things looked so bad. I realized too late that his eyes had looked like those of my leader. Now I understand why my lord I wasn't careful enough, and couldn't defend against the man's constant attacks. Finally, he slammed me against the wall. He stabbed at me over and over again. The metal protecting my neck started to fail because of his attacks and broke. It was a battle of strength between us. I was testing him, so I was probably a little stronger. But I still lost. Did I not think he was capable of much? Or did his strong will help him do something amazing? Through my blurry vision, I saw the man raise his hands and cheer. Whoa, it was strange, but I started to laugh when I saw him so happy. Maybe I was losing my senses. I looked up at the ceiling as I started to feel faint. I couldn't see what the very tall columns were supporting because it was too dark. It felt like those columns showed how far away I was from the king, and that made me feel sad. I wasn't sure if I should be glad my leader was correct, or upset that I hadn't been able to change his thinking. I lost consciousness before I could decide. Then, he came near and told me to stand up. He showed he cared about me. I think it was because I was one of the first people to join his team. I really appreciated all the nice things he did for me. I especially remember one time he said to me, "You'll be able to talk to me more when you get better, won't you?" Seeing his happy smile made me feel amazing. I wasn't sure what he thought of me, but I looked up to him. He was like a teacher, a friend, and someone I fought alongside. We fought in many battles together. We faced magical creatures, monsters, and even people who hunted them. When he was joyful, I felt happy too. When he had difficulties, I struggled with him. His sadness made me sad as well. Slowly, I began to accept the new leader, even though I knew I would feel less connected to my old master as I became more loyal to the new one. It wasn't always simple though. Things were difficult at times. Someone gave me a special weapon. Once, I had to fight a female hunter, but I wasn't allowed to use most of my abilities. I could only use a sword that shot lightning. She was stronger than me. Was that dark night truly the best you had? I felt embarrassed. I also unexpectedly got a new roommate who was incredibly strong. He made a loud roaring sound. This roommate acted exactly like you would expect a ferocious creature to act. He was very wild and strong. I really missed my old friends. That's why I felt a little bit better when I saw Bellion defeating Baru, just a little. But being happy to see an old friend didn't last very long. Soon, Baru started to influence Bellion too. "Hey, this black flag, do you think our king would like it if we put it on top of the castle? Are you serious?" I might not be as good at building as some people, but I'll do anything to make him happy. No, that's not what I meant. Ooh, is that flag for our king? Really, we don't even need to think about how the king would react. Anyway, Delian became more powerful after he absorbed the shadow army that had been waiting for him in another dimension. Even though I was worried, he treated the soldiers who had served the old shadow monarch just like his own troops. We all worked together and were ready to fight in any battle for him. Training went by quickly and we soon had a chance to prove ourselves in a war against the other monarchs. We fought with all our strength, and our king led us to win. When he fought the Dragon King, we all watched the important battle from hiding. The fight between them was so powerful, it filled me with strong feelings. Screech, wow. Are you crying? Igris, be quiet. At one very dangerous moment, all of our army became very excited in the shadow of our king. But right then the rulers opened a doorway in the sky and their soldiers came rushing through. They shouted loudly. We cheered as we watched the new soldiers arrive from above. Why did it take them so long? I think they waited until the last minute just to worry us. If I were fighting, I would have told them to hurry up. Even though we complained about the ruler's army taking so long, we were happy and hugged each other to celebrate our king's win. But our happiness didn't last very long. The king spoke. Could you please use the cup of reincarnation one more time? He told the rulers he wanted to go back in time and erase all memory of them, and the monarchs from the world. He wanted it to be as if they had never existed. I used to have people I cared about, and wanted to protect when I was alive, so I understood how he felt. I think I would have done the same thing if I were in his place, and I admired his choice. My friends and I were prepared to fight, not just the monarchs, but any army that came against our king, but not everyone was allowed to participate in the battle. Some of our friends disappeared when the powerful object was used. Those soldiers fell to their knees and cried. I tried to comfort Iron, who had been with us for a long time, Greed, who had always been in trouble with the king, and the other soldiers who were sad. After we said goodbye, we traveled back in time, and found ourselves in a new war. Our king became a very skilled leader, and our kingdom grew stronger. We faced many challenges, both large and small, but with each problem he solved, he became more powerful. This continued for almost 30 years. After defeating all our other enemies, only one army remained, the army of destruction. When the battle began between our king and the Dragon King, we fought against the ancient dragons. One of the ancient dragons, named Grenode, spoke to me as I fought through the dragon army. He said, Igris, you used to be a strong fighter alongside the Shadow Army, but now you follow this new human king. Don't you feel any guilt? Grenode had already changed back into a human because he was too tired to stay as a dragon. He was breathing heavily and held his chest where the sword had gone in. I stared down at him, feeling confused. He was correct. I had totally forgotten about the old Shadow Monarch because being with my new master was so wonderful. How long had it been since I stopped thinking about the old monarch? Even though Grenode was defeated, and the fighting continued all around me, I stood still for a long time. I used to think my old master was everything to me. But did I make a mistake somewhere? I couldn't think clearly as I started to feel unsure. Then I heard a voice calling my name from a distance. Igris, it was the voice of my king. I quickly looked up and saw a bright light. It was the breath of destruction. After using a lot of his strength fighting the Shadow Monarch, the Dragon King had changed back into a human. He sent flames toward me. It wasn't that he was trying to hit me exactly. I just happened to be in the path of the fire. I was very unlucky. Many people had died simply by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now it was my turn. A loud crash. I realized as soon as I saw the flash that it was already too late. I stopped moving, accepting what was happening. The bright light made me think this might be a consequence for forgetting a promise I made to a powerful leader I had once served. I was happy to face the consequences of what I had done. As I waited for the end, someone moved in front of me and stopped the deadly blast with just one hand. The powerful attack burned their left hand, but they didn't even flinch or try to move it away. I was shocked to see him protect me from the flames that could have destroyed everything. My lord! When the powerful blast of energy faded, he looked at me with a stern expression. I quickly realized what was happening, just like when he had called my name before. My leader glanced at me quickly before running toward the Dragon King again. I lifted my sword to fight the dragon creatures coming near me. Clang! Sparks appeared as swords hit each other. The dragon creatures I had defeated shouted in pain. Yes, that was what needed to happen. I always remembered the former Shadow Monarch. But my feelings now belonged to my current master. I was totally devoted to the person the previous Shadow Monarch had selected as his replacement. How could being faithful be a bad thing? I was a knight, and meant to serve my leader. I was a leading warrior in the Shadow Army. If I ever needed to leave the current king, I would tell him something I never got to say to the king before him. It would be something like, "It was a great honor to fight for you." I let out a loud shout, and ran toward the dragons attacking me. When the war was over, we all returned safely to my king's world. He was busy studying late into the night. From the dark I could see what he was looking at. "Sir, the answer to number 14 is B, not A." "Oh, is that right? Thanks." This man had been asked to leave his middle school because he hadn't been there enough days. Now he was working on a new challenge called a qualifying exam. He usually did very well on practice tests. But sometimes he lost concentration and made a mistake. Who would help him when that happened? Grand Marshal Bellion was strong but not very smart, and Marshal Baru was intelligent but small. When I was a person, I did very well in night training, so if I don't help my master, wait, are you certain about this? Igris. The answer to number 14 is A, my king said as he looked at the answer key. As a knight, I knew I had made a mistake. I guess my practice wasn't good enough. I will work even harder for you, my lord. I am my king's knight. I am the sword of my king. Where my king fights, I fight too. Now that my leader has started a new job, my important work continues. Sometimes Jinchul felt sad, like he had forgotten something important. He tried hard to remember, but he couldn't. The more he thought about it, the worse he felt. "What are you thinking about so deeply?" A new detective asked Jinchul, as he gave him a cup of hot coffee. "Thanks," Jinchul said, and acted like nothing was wrong. The smell of the coffee made him feel a little better. Jinchul Wu had been a detective working on serious crimes for 4 years. He wasn't usually someone who showed a lot of emotion, but he'd been feeling sad for about 3 years. And the feeling would come back sometimes. Whenever he told people about it, they would tell him he was probably sad, because he didn't have a family yet, even though he was older. Jinchul smiled sadly and quickly finished his coffee. That was true, wasn't it? People always said, if you stayed busy you wouldn't have time to feel down. Working hard was the best way to feel better. When Jinchul went into the office, he saw 3 men sitting together. He crushed his paper cup and nodded toward them. "Who are those men?" "Oh, them." The new detective paused, and Jinchul quickly stepped forward to stand with the officers. Their faces were very pale, like they had seen something scary. They were shaking and couldn't look at anyone. Jinchul quietly said, "It's the shadow monster again." It wasn't unusual for people who did something wrong to come to the police station and admit it, because they felt guilty, or were afraid of being caught. It was unusual for criminals to be frightened and asked to be put in jail, but this had been happening for several months. The shadow suddenly appeared from the ground and talked to me. It said I would be very sorry if I didn't turn myself in within a day. "It's all my fault, detective. Please put me in jail." Every single person who called said the same thing. After a while, the people in charge thought something was wrong and asked for an investigation. Jinchul spoke up loudly. "So you're saying you all saw a shadow monster?" "Yes." Jinchul was taking their statements and writing down why they had come in. How could he actually write this report? Telling people about a shadow monster and a 24-hour curse made his head hurt. Tap. Jinchul turned around when a senior detective said, "Jinchul, let the new detective write this report. Come to the conference room." Serious crimes had decreased because of this strange creature's good work. And now a sudden meeting. What could this be about? The lead detective went ahead, leaving a confused Jinchul, who looked surprised as he stood up from his chair. "I will handle things here, Detective Wu." "Good, thank you." He left the new detective with some encouraging words before joining the other detectives in the meeting room. "What? You want to let those bad guys go?"
"Hey, please be quieter. Others might hear us." Jinchul looked surprised and asked again, "What do you mean, you want to let them go? We aren't exactly letting them go. We are going to watch them closely to see what they do in the next 24 hours.
One of Jinchul's co-workers looked worried. Sir, they are saying things that don't make sense because they seem confused and disoriented. Maybe this creature is something they are imagining because of a drug. Their tests for drugs were negative. I checked with the lab myself to be sure. But do you really think a drug could make all these different criminals see the same thing? Something that would make them want to confess? Jinchul's coworker didn't have an answer. The older detective kept talking. The leaders wanted updates, but we still didn't know much. Did anyone have a good idea? We should be able to find some clues if we tried this. The other detectives didn't seem excited about the plan at first, but they looked at each other and agreed. It was worth a try. If everyone really did see the same strange sight, it might help them find some clues. Let them say what they want, and let's wait to see what happens. Jinchul had been listening quietly, but he finally spoke up. But what if something bad happens to those people?